Okay, so what we have here is the striped brandywine. Is that what this is? No, I'm sorry. I apologize. I take that back. This is actually called the vintage brandywine. Now, this is a striped tomato. This is my first striped tomato that I ever grew as far as striped tomatoes. I have been growing the striped tomato for about 4 years. 3 years or 4 years, something like that. And I fell in love with the tomato ever since I got it. Not just because of its absolute beauty, but because of taste. It absolutely tastes delicious. Now, I was getting these tomatoes in the area of 1 to 1.5 pounds last year. They were absolutely unbelievable in size. I was just taking for granted that, well, this is what they're supposed to do, and apparently I'm wrong. I got these. I'm lucky I got them because I have a rat that's in my greenhouse that is devastating all the tomatoes in my greenhouse. So I have to pick them early. Now, these were picked a couple days ago, and I let them ripen. So now they look like they should be ready. These guys are ready for juice. You know, they're nice and juicy. They're good to go. And I like to make pizza pies. I don't know if I ever told you guys I make my own pizzas, and I like to use these tomatoes in my pizzas. I basically, make the bread and I put the cheese on it, and then I slice the tomato. Instead of making tomato sauce, I slice my tomatoes and I put them on top of the cheese. And then you can add your other toppings, maybe bell peppers if you got them, or you can add pepperoni or whatever it is that you want to add to it. And that's how I like to make my pizzas. It's a great snack. I can make it and it lasts me 2 days. I can eat it for 2 days, and I don't need to make a giant pie. So I like to use a lot of my garden tomatoes to make my pizzas and my Italian dishes, my pasta dishes and things like that. And it's not always just salads. I do eat salads, but this year kind of threw me off, and now that the tomatoes are finally starting to come in, I can get on my big salad regimen that I normally do. And maybe I'll show you guys how I like to prepare my salads when I do make salads. A lot of times I just forage and I eat whatever I can in the field, and that's usually good, but I do like to eat my salads and I enjoy doing that. So anyway, this is the vintage brandywine, and it is a striped tomato, as you can see. I have been growing this for several years. I believe this seed, did I grow this from store seed? I think I did grow these from store seed. Did I grow? No, I actually, you know what? These are probably F2 or F3 seeds. More than likely F2 seeds. Because I don't have very many F3s, and I save my F3s for as long as possible, and then like every 5 or 10 years I will replant those seeds to see their viability after 10 years. But this one is roughly an F2. So this, in other words, I bought the seeds, I grew it, got my seed from that. That would be considered F1. So this is a second year of my own seeds that sprouted, all right? Just so we understand. I know F2 is used a little bit differently in the world of agriculture and how it's applied to, generations of tomatoes and vegetables and heirlooms and all that. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear that I'm just using the terminology for a way for me to identify how many years the seed's been going. So it's not under technical terms in F2. I'm not going by that by any means. I'm just using it as a way to keep track of how many years it's producing seed successfully. And this particular tomato has been producing wonderful tomatoes successfully since I've had it. Never had blossom end rot on it. I've had these tomatoes dry out in pots just abused in a lot of cases, because I do abuse a lot of my plants on purpose for the sake of science, to see what I can get away with under what environmental conditions and things like that. So I know it sounds cruel, but I'm not being cruel. I have to know my limitations. Certain tomatoes, for example, the San Marzano, now there's San Marzano 1, San Marzano 2, and San Marzano 3, and I've had not good success with the San Marzano 2s. They are absolutely prone to blossom end rot no matter what you do, and it's not just me. You go into forums and you start talking to people and you start reading the comments on seed sites that sell them, and most people are saying the same exact thing that I'm experiencing. So with that particular tomato, it's absolutely prone to this blossom end rot. So I haven't had that experience with this tomato. This tomato has been under many environmental conditions, everything from wet to soaking. And I've grown it in self-watering containers. I've also grown it outdoors in the soil. I've grown them in pots, and it grows great. In fact, it's almost self-seeding, and that's kind of unusual for a big tomato, because you usually pick your tomatoes. But I usually grow several hundred plants a year, and when you grow in that many tomato plants, you can't possibly eat them all, and eat them and sell them. I mean, it's very hard to. Tomatoes come to ripeness within a day or two. They're basically turning into that. Okay, they just start to rot on you. At least here they do. You don't have any time. You have to process them very quickly. You only have about a day or two to do what you got to do, and that's it. These roughly been out for about a day. They've been out for 2 days curing. They were picked relatively ripe, but they've been curing for about 2 days since I pulled it off the vine. And these tomatoes do sit on your table for a little while. They won't rot right away like that one. And I'll do a video on that tomato, which is called the mortgage lifter. I will talk about my experience on that, and I'll explain a little bit about that. But all right, so let's do a taste test on this vintage brandy wine here. I'm sure you're curious to know exactly what it tastes like. Well, let's take a look inside. Oh yeah. Oh, look at the inside of this tomato. Now this is a very interesting combination of characteristics. Okay, so first of all, you have, it looks like 8 chambers. What is that? 2, 4, 6, 7 chambers. You got 7 chambers. I'm sure you get 8 chambers in it. Now, this is generally what you're going to expect from this tomato. You're going to get the 7 chambers. You're going to have a core in the middle. And you can see the seeds got greening in them. Okay, so this vintage brandy wine has somewhere along the line had been crossed with a darker type tomato like that one. All right, not necessarily that one, because that is actually from a hybridized type of crossing, but in the blue tomato area, we're talking the purple Cherokees and Paul Robinsons and things like that. But you can't see some of the greening in these seeds, and that stays prominent in that characteristic all the way through its ripening process, right to the point where it starts to break down and decay. So it does have some of them properties in this tomato. And the rinds are kind of on the brownish side, again, carrying those characteristics of brown tomatoes. I definitely have to say that's very noticeable to me anyway. I don't know if you can pick that up on there. But again, it has the rinds. I do see some of the wild greening that you get in the rind of the tomato, which you will see in the wild tomatoes, or heirloom variety tomatoes. The store-bought tomatoes you get, that you will not see that, and the reason why you will not see that is because those tomatoes were hybridized to make it a perfect color. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're trying to grow store tomatoes. You are not going to get anything near this, and this is why heirloom tomatoes are absolutely delicious. There's no comparison as far as taste to a store-bought tomato? Absolutely none. I'm sorry. I can't stand store-bought tomatoes, even though I'm forced to eat them throughout the winter because I normally don't have tomato plants growing in the winter, guys. All right, so that's the inside. That's the bottom. As you can see, it's got that beautiful pattern, and I'm going to take a bite for you. Very delicious. Oh, man. This tomato, it's hard to explain. Let me take another bite so I can make sure that I explain it right. Okay, it has, in the seeds area, it carries that nice tangy flavor. I love the tangy flavor. It's very hard for me to save seeds because I really want to eat that part of it. That makes the tomato flavor to me, especially when I'm making Italian dishes. To remove the seed for me is like a sin, but unfortunately I have to make sacrifices. I do grow enough tomatoes where I can get away with that. Some years I get more tomatoes than others. Obviously this year I'm not going to really be getting too many tomatoes, even though it seems like I'm getting tomatoes. To me, that's absolutely decimating to me. I'm used to getting wheelbarrows of tomatoes, 5-gallon pails full of tomatoes per day that I put out in front of my house, and this year is just not happening. So back to the tomato review. As far as taste, it's got that tang. It has not necessarily a sweet taste to it, but it has a very smooth taste to the rind, and the characteristics of that tangy flavor in the seeds just kind of melds together with the rind. It just gives it a very palatable taste, and I don't know what else to say about it. It's definitely not like sweet, but it's very neutral in flavor, and it has like a very slight sweetness, but it's generally a neutral flavor. You're going to get more of the tangy flavor on this tomato than you are with sweetness. Now, if you take these tomatoes and you let these tomatoes ripen to the point where they're just about rotting on your table, and you turn that into sauce, now you're going to get a sweeter sauce. You're generally not going to eat your tomatoes when they're getting that ripe. It's not desirable. But for sauces, what I like to do is take my tomatoes and put them out to the point where they're going to squish in your hands as you pick them up off the table, for example. I let them ripen on my table. So they're going to just about squish. And at that stage is the stage you really want to start making your sauces at, for multiple reasons. One, it reduces your cook time. Also, too, most of the starches within the tomato convert over to that sugar flavor, and the sugar actually helps balance out the acidic taste in your sauces when you make sauces. So, guys, when you make your tomato sauces, make sure you let your tomatoes ripen fully. You want them to fully ripen to the point where they're almost rotten. That's the way my grandmother used to do it, and she's from Italy, and she's from the old country. They've been doing it that way for centuries, and you have to get them to that point of rottenness where it's almost rotten. That's a trick to making some of the best tasting tomato sauces. But nevertheless, this does make a good sauce. It makes a good slicing tomato. It makes a good shish kebab tomato. When I say shish kebab, most of that center part's coming out. You're going to use the center part of it. You want to cook your shish kebab first, like your meats and stuff, and then you would cut sections of this out and then skew it on your shish kebab skew, and then grill it then, because they cook very fast, and if they overcook, they soften and fall off the skew. So, but yeah, you can do a lot of wonderful things with this tomato. It's an excellent salad tomato. Ultimately, out of all the striped tomatoes so far, and I have only tried about maybe a half dozen striped tomatoes in this family of striped tomatoes. Not these kind, like the Tigerilla small. This is a Tigerilla, not the Tigerilla small tomatoes, but like the larger type striped tomatoes. There's a few varieties. I've tried them. I've tasted them and all. but I haven't tried them under multiple growing conditions, because ultimately your growing condition is really going to determine what your tomato tastes like. I've seen people do tomato tastes, and they're like, oh, this is disgusting, and then never buy it again. You can't do that. It was probably your growing environment caused that tomato to not taste at its proper and ultimate way it could taste. So there's certain things you have to change with certain tomatoes to get that real, that real rich flavor. All right, so let me finish this tomato, and then I'll button up this review. Yeah, all right, so it's the same thing. The rind really is only going to have a very small amount of sweetness. I would say like 10%. 10% sweet, and then like over here you're going to be like 60-70% on the tangy flavor. And if you want this tomato to be less tangy in your sauces and your cooking, just remove the seeds, that's all, and just use the solid pulp matter, and that should give you a very neutral flavoring, neutral tasting sauce. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the review. Another look at the vintage brandy wine, guys. This is a winner. I definitely recommend growing this one. Very happy to review this tomato. I have pictures from 2015 that, if they're clear enough and they're good enough images, maybe I'll include those in this video, and I'll show you what my 2015 tomatoes were. They were absolutely 2-3 times the size of this one. So this tomato variety can produce quite large tomatoes. Okay, now this one's only roughly maybe a half a pound at best. It's just a good, you can see it on my hand. It's just